She's still laughing.
That's so funny. Welcome to 5 Lemons Left. We're the real stuff, the lemons making lemonade. So pucker up, because we're going to be discussing our life's lessons and the nitty-gritty details of our spiritual journeys.
Hey y'all, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Drusilla.
I'm Melissa.
Hello, this is Morgan.
And I'm Penny. Welcome to our podcast today.
Buckle your seatbelts, Dorothy. Kansas is going bye-bye. Today, we are talking about, is the world an illusion? And how we deal with that and incorporate it in our lives. It all started in our podcast last week. We had a couple of listeners participate. And one of our beautiful listeners, Maureen, said, what do we do about evil in the world? Or she asked a question in that. And the discussion turned towards the world is an illusion. And we went really deep. We really out there, and we wanted to spend more time talking about that today. So Morgan is going to start us off by telling us what the Course in Miracles teaches about this world that we think we live in.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Amanda. And I'll just add, as we were meeting just before recording here, we were thinking back to when we first started studying A Course in Miracles and how kind of difficult to wrap our heads around this concept was for us, even in the beginning, and even is still now. So that is kind of what inspired us to go a little bit deeper on this topic. So yeah, A Course in Miracles teaches that there's a lot of language overlap between the Course in Miracles and the Bible and the New Testament specifically. And it talks about the separation. And A Course in Miracles asserts that the separation from God is like never actually occurred. Like, how could it occur? God is omnipresent, all powerful, all present, like everywhere, always. And so the concept of separation doesn't actually make sense in that context if you think about it with your logical brain, which is what I love about A Course in Miracles, because it's logical, whereas I find a lot of incongruencies in some other spiritual texts. So the separation from God never actually occurred. We are having a dream that we are separate from God because we had what the Course calls a tiny mad idea that we wondered what it would be like to exert our own power separate from God. And in that moment, like the Big Bang occurred and the ego was born, the world that as we see it and know it, experience it, was born. And we've just been like Sleeping Beauty for eons, having this. And we know how dreams work. Like they seem like, we went on this mega voyage that lasted for years and it took place in a few nanoseconds. So that is, anyway, okay, I'm getting off on a tangent. I think that's a summary of the Course's what the Course says about the world being an illusion. And I feel like one of you other ladies might have something to add to that or clarify about what I said. Does anybody want to add anything about their interpretation of what A Course in Miracles means about the world being an illusion?
For me, it's thank you, Morgan. That was a great explanation of the Courses and its view. To me, it's so mind-boggling that all the dots still don't connect. Like, But what I know is the connection, the thread that combines us all, right? So that's what I know because I've seen it prove out in my life. So when I tap into the love connection, I see more love in my life. When I tap into the prosperity aspect of it, I see more prosperity in my life. So those are the things I know without any reading or anything. And then my logical mind can apply it to, well, we are all part of God. So that's the thread that connects us all. But I do have to admit that the this world is an illusion is still not something that I know in every fiber of this being that I'm in right now.
Yeah, I
So,
agree with that, Amanda.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just threw a big wrench into the system, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, like, knowing something experientially is like on a whole different level. And I love your honesty and authenticity about that. And like, there's no, what another thing I love about A Course in Miracles is you don't have to believe or understand everything in A Course in Miracles because it's a holographic teaching, which we've discussed on here before. And it doesn't require your belief, it says at the beginning of the workbook lessons. It just requires your willingness to practice the tools and the teaching. So, Drusilla, you looked like you wanted to say something.
Before we move to Drusilla, let me just, because I know we might have talked about the holographic teaching, but I don't remember when. It could be so long ago. So if you would just, Morgan, redefine that for someone who may be tuning in for the first time or only listened to a few other episodes.
Okay, my pleasure. I love the holograph metaphor, because if you think about the old holograms that used to come inside a pack of baseball cards, like the real holograms, if you looked at the picture, say it's a baseball player getting ready to swing a baseball bat, and you cut it in half, and then you cut the halves in half, and you just kept cutting them until you had tiny little squares. Each little square would have the picture of the player swinging the baseball bat. So the part contains the whole image. The part contains the whole. So any one part of A Course in Miracles contains the whole. So if you understand any one sentence from A Course in Miracles, any one concept from A Course in Miracles, you understand it all. If you understand forgiveness, you understand it all. If you understand holy relationships, you understand the whole teaching. If you understand salvation, you understand the whole teaching. If you understand the world is an illusion, you understand the whole teaching. But if you don't understand that one, then you can let that go. You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to believe it.
Morgan, that is the best explanation of a holographic teaching that I have ever heard.
Yeah.
So, yay.
Yes.
Yay.
I love it. And what I love about it that just resonated with me so much, Morgan, is that is also the explanation for if the world is an illusion, then what is happening? We all are a replica, a piece of God. It's the same exact thing.
The part contains the whole. Yes.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I know it all can make sense intellectually. But there's something that I like to use as a way for myself when I need to reel it back in for myself and say, okay, let me make this really make sense for me on a daily basis. Probably not daily, but when I need to reel myself in every now and again. So if we think about the concept of if the world is an illusion, what is it that we're really experiencing? So that's the question, right? That's the ultimate question. So then if you dig deeper and inquire about, well, what is it that you are experiencing? It's all coming through the senses, right? There's no experience outside of that. So where is it that you are experiencing all of the things that come from your senses. If you touch something, where is it that you're experiencing it actually? In your mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
In your mind. So then if you say to yourself, nothing exists outside of your mind, is that a leap?
Say that
There
again,
is
Priscilla.
nothing exists outside of your mind.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me repeat this back to you.
Back it up.
Okay.
So let's go back to the step before that.
Yes, thank you.
Everything that you experience through your senses. Your taste, your smell, your vision, your hearing. Right?
Never thought of it like that, but yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I concur.
And where does that get processed? I mean, even if you touch something right now, yes, there's a sensory in your hand, but where does it get processed? In your mind, right?
Right.
So there is nothing outside of your mind.
Yeah.
So we're making it all up.
Yeah, we are. And honestly, like if you want to get real nerdy, I know Melissa loves talking about quantum physics. But
Did you just call Melissa a nerd?
Totally.
I love nerds. I'm a nerd too, so I meant it as a term of endearment. But yeah, like even quantum physics confirms like that nothing is really real. I mean, like even math, if you look at the quantum level, there is no such thing as math. Like it's just light particles. So, I mean, and if you look at what are the little balls that they use to do experiments with in quantum physics? I don't remember what they're called, but like they throw it through space and they break it down to like the nanosecond to see how it moves through space. And it doesn't move in a fluid line. It's constantly stopping and recreating itself in each nanosecond. Like matter doesn't really exist and doesn't behave the way that we think it does. So lots of quantum physics kind of points to the unreality of this universe as we sense it.
Melissa?
I get excited about these nerdy things.
Well, I would just say, like, for me, what we're talking about is a story around the Course in Miracles has just kind of made a story for everyone to be able to digest that, just like you said, that quantum physics is happening all around us. We are creating our reality with our minds and all these things happening at the same time, so many different versions of the exact same thing happening through time and space at the same time. I kind of like the scientific bend a little more, but because you all know I'm not a big God person. So, I think it's a story we have put around science, that we're a piece of God and that kind of thing. So for me, it really is scientifically proven. Course in Miracles just explains it in a spiritual wrapper.
How is it scientifically proven, Melissa? Maybe you can share that with our listeners.
Really?
Well, you're saying it.
With me.
Through quantum physics and the study of quantum physics, and they say if you understand quantum physics, you don't. Because it's so hard to understand just the multiple realities, the creating reality with your mind. I think we are all coming to like a spiritual understanding of the science of quantum physics, that you can manipulate time and space, your present and your future, based on your mind. And so I I mean, I don't know, read some books, quantum physics books.
So I have a question then. So
Or history major.
So then if we are, creating everything around us through our mind, then why do bad things happen?
Right.
Because we're creating it.
So why do we create bad things?
Because we feel guilty about thinking we separated from God. If we've got to project that guilt out of, God, the wind is really crazy here right now. We got to project the guilt out of ourself and onto some perceived other.
It's very hard to comprehend because if something came and cut my arm off, I would feel it. So you wonder, like, how is that not reality? How is that an illusion? I think the more you kind of interact with violence, danger, the evil stuff, it's harder and harder to believe that it's really not real because it feels real.
But I disagree with that.
Yes.
Sorry. You had more to say. You had more to say there.
No, that's okay.
Well, I was just going to say, like, to me, like, yes, when I first learned about this principle, I was a little taken aback. Like, you mean to tell me my parents aren't real? You mean to tell me that my boyfriend, my husband isn't real? You mean, like, I was personally almost like offended by it. But the more that I studied and opened my heart and mind to just like, let me grasp this if it's helpful for me to grasp this, I realized it was way easier to believe than to believe in a punitive God who is contradictory. One minute he's the loving God, the next minute he's sending his children to an eternity in hell. Like, it was way easier to wrap my head around the concept that God has nothing to do with this world. This is all our self-perpetuating bad or happy dream, like as we choose. So
how's that disagreeing with me? Because I think what I was saying is that it's just hard to believe in this. When you think you're feeling actual pain, when we have a very good friend whose son-in-law just was killed instantly this weekend. And how do you wrap your mind around just losing someone that you love so much? And, you still feel it, or you think you're feeling it.
Right.
Right. And so and I think that's what Maureen was like, what? But I feel I've had bad things happen to me. I've had bad things happen to the ones I love. Go ahead, Drusilla.
I was going to say that, yes, I can certainly agree with both sides of the coin, but I can also say I've seen so much growth in myself, just like Morgan, starting from one point to the other, that it does become more digestible when you can say, well, yeah, I've had a bad dream too. And I also thought that was real.
Yes.
It felt really real.
Yes.
It's so in the same vein, I can look at parents, children, and still say it's still things that I made up. If I look at my life, I can look at it in the entirety and say, I decided to have this experience with all this stuff. I decided that.
Yeah.
And I am comfortable. I mean, it doesn't feel strange to me anymore that I decided to have this experience with you all. That I decided that I wanted to, be a filmmaker, like just dream about that. I decided all of this stuff. And it doesn't seem too far-fetched for me, even the bad stuff, because it's there for contrast. It's there for awareness, which is what we're all on this journey for. So if we didn't experience that, if there were certain things that didn't happen along the way that I didn't agree with, then how would I ever pivot? Like, would there ever be any pivots in my life? Would there ever be any substantial growth? Probably not, you know? And looking at the things that we consider to be bad and evil, we all know stories where those bad or evil things turned out to serve us.
Sure.
In a strange way or in a unique way, just like 9/11. This is the first time this has popped up in my mind as an example. And it was such a long time after that, everybody referenced how loving people were after 9/11. And there's probably so many relationships, so many things that have spun out of that we have no idea, right? That probably outweigh those lives that were lost by leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we can't see it and know it doesn't mean that it's not so, you know?
Yep.
And what you're saying is so uncomfortable, Drusilla, right? Because how could anybody look at what happened on 9/11 and think good thoughts about that?
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm like squirming in my seat and want to take it back because I don't want people to stop listening, right? It's like, what are you? And I can also be with the fact that, like, I'm sure, like, I even know, like, the way that we came together after that, we as a nation came together after that was amazing.
I'm reminded of the quote from the Bible, like, you meant it for evil, but the Lord meant it for good, or something like that. Like, yeah. And we know that, going back to the scale of consciousness, which we've talked about many times, David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, we know that those loving vibrations are far more powerful than the evil vibrations, and affect, like, have a more compound, like exponentially powerful effect than those lower vibrations.
And I know we've had a few references to the Bible, and the one that comes back to me every time when I get into a mode of fear, physically or emotionally, it's always no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And from reading the course, I got a better understanding how to actually apply that in the sense that this is all an illusion. Because I know who I am as spirit is truly who I am. So what I'm experiencing here on earth, there is nothing that can harm that, whether it's a physical ailment or someone harming or attempting to harm me. The spirit of who I am will still be the same. It never changes. It can never be altered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the experience, let's say someone does, if they would do something awful to me, physically stab me, that's crazy, but let's say that, yes, that could be, I could end up in the hospital, something catastrophic could happen from that standpoint, but the essence of who I am, there's no harm done to it. There is nothing that can harm spirit.
Right.
Well said, Drusilla. To me, that's the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is tapping into the essence of who I am, that unchangeable thread, right? My mind still kind of explodes when I start thinking about the world as an illusion, right? So I can't even know that I go there. And as I said a little bit ago, like, I can see how it, by working with that concept, like I can make this illusion a happy place. I know eventually the ego is to let go of all the wanting and the needing. And right now I'm like, how can this concept work for me? Right? Like, how can I live a happy dream? That's where I am. And as I'm saying it, I'm like, that's the ego talking. And that's okay too, right? Because the ego is a tool. And right now I'm using it so I can manifest beauty in my life. You know, so that's how I work with it. It just makes my head explode a little bit to really dive into this world is an illusion.
So
Yeah, no, you go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, I was just going to say this is a great conversation with like just consider cracking the door open a little bit, just peeking into the concept that maybe this world is an illusion. Maybe it's like a dream, like we dream, like Drusilla was talking about. Maybe it is a holograph. You know, maybe we are all one. Just like be willing to crack the door open a little bit and consider these things. And then, because we all had to do that when we first started A Course in Miracles, we were like, what? And we're still that way, right? But we, like, I wouldn't say I fully, like, these are my principles, or I fully wrap my arms around all these concepts. Amanda said her brain still explodes thinking through it, but we've all allowed a little crack to be able to peek in and check it out, consider it. And also I think it gives us a couple things we talked about, which is connection, like stopping this separation that we're in this world, that we think we have in this world, from either our maker or each other or every living being. It's just something we've all had to kind of try on, and we all have our own feelings about. And I also was going to say, and responsibility, like taking responsibility for your own actions, how you react, how you think, how you love. I think that all plays into this as well. I think for me, like, the more I would look at my own reaction to things, the more I could see that I am creating a lot of the world. Just little peeks into it, nothing major, but just like, oh yeah, I could be doing this differently and I'd have different outcomes. So just these little tiny like breadcrumbs to the answer. I think we all can kind of open our minds to that.
That's a really good point, Melissa. Definitely. To just take it in small doses, right? So we don't have to blow our mind out.
Right.
No, I mean, we still live like we're A Course. Is it A Course in Miracles or Disappearance of the Universe? That book, Gary Renard. It's like, just be normal. Just be normal. Like, you don't have to go around like, oh, that person just pushed that child onto the ground. The world is an illusion. It doesn't matter. Like, we don't have to just go through life like shrugging everything off. Like, the world is an illusion. It doesn't matter. Like, just live your life. And if this feels incomprehensible, then just let it go. Focus on your forgiveness work. Focus on your taking responsibility. Like, was that Melissa? Was that what you said? And
building on what you're saying, Morgan and Melissa, is that when we take responsibility to harvest the learning from whatever the lesson was that was in front of us, and then maybe we won't have that situation happen again. Maybe we're evolving ourselves, growing ourselves up, or evolving our spiritual self. Yeah.
We're all just walking each other home, right?
It's a nice thought.
Yes, I was thinking when Morgan said it about forgiveness and doing the work, and my mind just goes to these places. And so it quickly went to yeah, you keep forgiving, and eventually the universe disappears. She mentioned Gary Renard's disappearance of the universe. So all roads leads us to no universe, unfortunately. But yes, just taking the smaller steps. And I think forgiveness is probably the one that most people can grasp onto the quickest and understand that it really is about forgiving the meaning you made of it, which still kind of is the same thing we're talking about. We're
So,
making
Drusilla, can you give us an example of what that would look like? Like maybe you can give us a real life experience. Oh, you've got one, Amanda?
I do.
Okay, Amanda, give it to us. Yeah. I'm picking you, Amanda.
It has to do with my horse River. So anytime that I can talk about River, I'm gonna do it, right? I realized that especially when we were first writing, that his responses were trauma responses, right? He was responding from old thoughts, old behaviors. It was, and how I responded to him, right, made a difference. So I finally came to the conclusion that I actually have nothing to forgive in River, because I have nothing to forgive in River because he was not coming at me in malice. That's what I got out of it. I had to forgive myself a lot for when he had a trauma response and I responded back in fear. That's a big deal, right? Right. Because so
beautiful.
he would say something and I would respond with fear, with punishment, with anger. So I had a lot of self-forgiveness, but I finally got to the place where River actually was not doing anything wrong.
That's so beautiful, Amanda. That just gave me chills.
Yeah, I'm listening to a book now about trading of all things, but he talks about fear responses and how, like, if a child's first encounter with a dog is a scary one, then every dog he encounters likely in the next weeks or months are going to be fear responses, even if the next dog is a super friendly dog. And so that's how humans are too. Like, they're just responding from what assumptions they've made based on past encounters. And so when you think of them like the little child who's just had a scary, traumatic encounter with a dog, you know what I mean? Like, then it becomes easier to forgive if they are less than kind to you, because it's probably a reaction or response that they developed out of a fearful circumstance that they encountered. Amanda's story, like, similar thing. That's what it made me think of.
What I like about that is, Penny, that you asked the question, and it also, in Amanda's and Morgan's explanation, can also explain how evil happens, or what we perceive to be evil, how it happens out of trauma responses as well. And so it just, I think it all just, if we take it in doses and not run away from it, then it will resonate with us more and more each day as we have experiences come up that we need to be forgiven for, or that we can forgive others for.
I think something really important to add to that story, about River, is that my response, right, letting go of fear and anger, that doesn't mean that I didn't stay on the horse, right? It doesn't mean that I fell off or allowed myself to, I have fallen off a lot, but it doesn't mean that I didn't work to stay in the saddle. It doesn't mean that I didn't work on how our partnership together. It doesn't mean that I didn't establish a boundary and I didn't work on it. Like, so it doesn't. So in that forgiveness, it doesn't mean that I was accepting just accepting River's trauma response without dealing with it. That's not, I just think that needs to be said as well.
Yeah, it's like baggage in a relationship. Like, are you supporting each other in unpacking the baggage, or are we just going to carry it around forever? And like, if you think about the evil in the world, those are just people with extreme loads of baggage.
It's a lot to process, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot to process.
We also last week talked about just having some curiosity, and that would be helpful here. Like, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Just be curious about maybe some other ideas that you haven't had in your head before. What is this illusion stuff? How would that impact me? How would I make my life different if I thought differently? Just kind of try some stuff on with curiosity.
Yeah.
I also have another kind of visual way that I remind myself. Obviously, I have a lot of reminders. Yes, life gets difficult, and studying A Course in Miracles, that, it just, I know it's there. I cannot know it anymore. It's kind of just like the Bible. People who know it, you cannot know it. So if you go out and do something egregious, then you're going to have guilt about it, right? So I have to have all these ways that kind of bring me back. And the way I look at it as, how can I make this make sense from a physical standpoint? In terms of every person being a cell of one body. And it's so self-explanatory. If you think about a body, we have cells within our body. And if they had a conscience, then they would assume that their life inside of me is its own.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's just a part of a whole. And that's what we are.
Yeah. I love that.
So I have a question now based on that, Drusilla. So I have a lot of people in my life that don't believe in this spiritual woohoo stuff that we believe in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's how my husband describes it too. Woohoo stuff.
Yeah. So my question is, like, how do you be with them in this world and stay in your spiritual space when they're saying you're full of shit? Or they don't really say you're full of shit, but this
Sometimes
is like
they do,
bullshit.
right?
It's bullshit. So what would you give our listeners? How would they approach that?
That's a great question, Penny. And of course, I live in this world with a lot of people who say the same thing. But I don't try to convince them.
Mm-hmm.
I just ask them to be a witness to certain things that I experience. And I ask them if they have any other explanation for it. And that I'm willing to listen to it.
Yeah. Well, that's like Pam Grout wrote a great book called E Squared, I think it is. And she, like, the whole purpose of the book is to go out and say, okay, you're going to see a peacock today. That you put that intention out there, and then you go see if you see a peacock. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to see that peacock just because you put your mind to it or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's proving that there's something bigger going on, because you may not ever have seen a peacock in that space before. So yeah, that's a good point. Anybody else?
I would say one of the hardest things for me is not talking about this stuff out in public for people that don't want to know about it. So, like, in my personal relationships, I had to get to the point where I did not talk to Mike about it because he didn't want to know about it. Mm-hmm. I don't talk about this unless there's a conversation going. Like, sometimes I'll, if I'm really get an intuitive hit, I'll drop a little, to open up, like crack the door a little bit. But if somebody doesn't push through, then I have to go, and then just not talk about it. That's the hardest part, is not trying to How many times have I said this? Like 5
push
times.
it on somebody.
Yeah, push it on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest thing, right? It's practicing the living it. And if people are curious, they're going to ask about it. But I'll tell you, not very many people ask.
I know. Yeah.
Not very many people ask. That's why I love this podcast platform, because the right people are tuning into this, listening it. So like if a person is listening right now, no matter what is going on in their head, right? You wouldn't have turned this podcast on if this isn't what you somewhere in your being wanted to hear.
Right.
It's like many are called.
Perfect example. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the call. You would They would not be listening if they were not ready to open the door, crack the door open, as Melissa stated. Would not even be tuned in.
And I think part of our like desire to like want to shout this from the rooftops and talk to every single person who has ears about it, part of that is like affirming the illusion. Like we think they have to hear this to end their suffering. And that's simply not true. So that's another thing that I love about it, because like growing up in the Christian church, like it was like really impressed upon you, like the need to witness about and draw people into the church and draw people into Christianity and to save people. And like, and of course in Miracles, it's like a whole different approach. It's like, just let your life be your testament. Like you don't need to say anything to anybody about this ever. And you know, if you're divinely inspired to say something, then say something. But like, there's no need.
Yeah, that's like the field of dreams, right? You build it, they will come.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great movie.
Yeah, because if you're a teacher, the student always shows up and vice versa. So, yes.
Is there any final words? I feel like we've just started to crack the door open a little bit for our listeners.
Yeah, and we've gone in a few different directions because it's also interconnected. But yeah, I think we could go on for ages.
Any final words from anyone that they want to just make sure that our listeners, to sum it all up?
I don't have any final words, but our listeners, please reach out. If you know one of us and you're listening, text us. Let us know what you're thinking. Like if there's anything about this conversation that you want clarity on, just hit us up. You know, I know a lot of my friends listen to this podcast, so please do. I'm inviting that.
I love that, Amanda. That's a beautiful request. Yeah. So I just have a couple of Post-its. Yeah. So curiosity can help. Be open with this thought about
it didn't kill the cat. Curiosity didn't kill the cat.
It did not.
That is just an illusion, baby.
Oh my gosh. And then my essence or my spirit never changes or can be harmed.
Yeah.
I love that when you talked about that, Drusilla.
Yeah.
And then also seemingly bad things in a strange way can turn out to be good. Yeah. And we may not see it for a long, long time. I mean, how many years has it been since 9/11? 20 some years. Yeah. So 23 years. That's how many years. I had to do the calculation there for a second. So anyway, that is our episode 88. And, you know, in Chinese numerology, 88 is a very lucky number. And so that's very exciting that we recorded 88 today. So
and the Lion's Gate, like it happens in like 2 days,
I know.
Which is a huge spiritual uplift, which is 8/8.
Yep.
Ooh.
And if you're a Grateful Dead fan, we're in the days between. There's an 8-day period between Jerry Garcia's birthday and his death day, and they celebrate that. The Deadheads celebrate that as the days between, and it's right during the Lionsgate portal too.
Wow.
Random Deadhead trivia.
So many great things going on. I love it.
Eights everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening today. And like I said, we've just barely scratched the surface on this topic of the world as an illusion. And it can be a little mind blowing, like our beautiful Amanda loves to say. It is for me too. Mm-hmm. And I go in and out of believing it, honestly. I think that's just the human condition, is just to go in and out of believing things, and it's all good. And like Amanda said, reach out to any one of us if you want to dig a little deeper in the well and learn a little bit more. So thank you all for joining us today. And you can go to our website, 5lemonslaughing.com, 5 spelled out, or you can hear us on all the podcast platforms. So that's it for today. That's a wrap.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening.